Imagine, just for a moment, an entity so colossal that in a single 90-day period, it generates over $81 billion.
Yeah, it's a number that's genuinely hard to wrap your head around.
Right. To put that in perspective for you listening, that is effectively the GDP of a nation like Sri Lanka or Luxembourg. Just put it.
Yeah.
In a single financial quarter, we are looking at Microsoft's performance in early 2026 today, and they recently touched a market valuation of $4 trillion.
$4 trillion. And, if you just look at the bank account, you actually miss the real story here. The fascinating part isn't how much money they have, but it's the sheer aggression with which they are spending it.
Exactly. Because if you are still thinking of Microsoft as the company that sells you Windows, or, the people who make the font bold in your Word document, you are living in the past. We have been reading through a massive stack of documents for this deep dive.
A very massive stack.
Yeah, their Q2 fiscal year 2026 earnings, some wild investment reports on green steel, and technical papers on storing data in glass for 10,000 years.
And when you synthesize all these sources, a very clear picture emerges. This isn't really a software company anymore.
Yeah.
They are becoming something else entirely. They're turning into a capital-intensive, heavy industry giant disguised as a tech firm.
So that is our mission today. We are unpacking Microsoft's trillion-dollar bet. We're going to look at their financial fortress, this massive strategic shift to AI agents versus just standard chatbots, and the sci-fi level investments they're making in the physical world just to, keep the lights on.
It really is a transition from just writing code to reshaping the atomic world.
Let's start with the money, though, because the numbers from this Q2 2026 report are the foundation for everything else. Revenue's up 17% year over year to $81.3 billion. Operating income sits at $38.3 billion.
Right, and the engine driving that is the cloud. The Microsoft Cloud segment alone hit over $51.5 billion for the quarter.
Wow.
To put that in context, the cloud business is now significantly larger than their entire company was just a few short years ago.
And within that, you have Azure, their cloud computing platform, growing at 39%.
Yeah.
Now, I want to pause on that 39% figure, because usually when a business gets this big, gravity kicks in.
Yeah.
Growth is supposed to slow down.
Exactly. It's the law of large numbers. Usually, you can't double the size of an elephant as easily as you can double the size of a mouse.
Right.
But Azure is defying gravity. It is a massive incumbent growing like a hungry startup. If you look at the comparative reports on Amazon's AWS, they are hovering around 20% growth. Microsoft is growing nearly twice as fast at a very similar scale.
Why, though? I mean, is it just the OpenAI effect? Is it just because everyone is using ChatGPT now?
That is the catalyst, yes. But you have to look at the structure of the deal. The earnings report shows a very specific detail that I think a lot of people missed. Their net income was positively impacted by a $7.6 billion gain specifically from their investments in OpenAI.
Wait, $7.6 billion just from the investment value going up. That sounds like paper money.
It is classified as a non-operating impact, correct. But it connects to the new partnership agreement mentioned in the sources. Microsoft has secured a 27% equity stake in OpenAI's for-profit entity.
Okay.
But here is the kicker, and this is where it gets circular. OpenAI has committed to purchasing $250 billion in cloud services from Microsoft over the next few years.
$250 billion. That is $250 billion.
Perfect.
So let me get this straight.
Yeah.
Microsoft invests billions into OpenAI. OpenAI takes that money, turns around, and commits to spending it and much more on Microsoft's Azure cloud to train their models. It feels like a closed loop.
It's a flywheel. Critics might call it round-tripping revenue, but strategically, it solidifies Azure as the absolute backbone of the AI revolution. It signals to the market that if you are doing serious AI, you are effectively required to do it on Azure because that is where the models live.
It sounds like they are funding their own best customer to guarantee that 39% growth.
In a way, yes, but it also locks in the ecosystem. If OpenAI is the standard and OpenAI runs on Azure, then everyone building on OpenAI runs on Azure. It's a defensive moat built out of Tash.
Okay, so they have the money and they have the moat. But let's talk about the product. Because Satya Nadella, the CEO, made some comments in these reports that suggest we are moving past wow, look, the computer can write a haiku phase.
Right. Nettle is calling this the phase of widespread diffusion. In his 2026 outlook, he specifically addresses the criticism that AI is just generating slop.
Slop was Merriam-Webster's word of the year for 2025, wasn't it?
He was,
It
yeah.
basically refers to low-quality, generic AI content just clogging up the internet.
Exactly. And that is a real risk for the industry. If AI is just a spam generator, the bubble bursts. Nadella wants to move past that. He is framing AI not as a content generator, but as a cognitive amplifier, a scaffolding for human potential.
Which leads us to the big terminology shift in the Q2 documents. Agents. Now, we hear this word a lot. How is an agent different from the chatbots we've had for the last 3 years?
This is the critical shift for 2026. A chatbot is conversational. You ask a question, it gives an answer. It's passive. An agent is agentic. It has agency. It is a teammate. You give it a high-level goal, and it breaks that goal down into steps, executes them, and reports back.
So instead of saying, write an email to Bob, I say, plan a meeting with Bob, check his calendar, draft the agenda based on our last 3 emails, and send the invite.
Precisely. And the sources gave a couple of really specific examples of this that show it's already happening. One was GitHub Copilot. It's moving beyond just completing a line of code.
They called it repository intelligence, right?
Yes. Think about the difference between a junior developer and a senior developer. A junior developer pastes a snippet of code they found on a forum. A senior developer understands the entire history of the project, how file A interacts with file B, and why we don't use that specific library anymore. Repository intelligence means the agent understands the context of the entire code base.
So it's not just autocomplete, it's architecture.
It's structural understanding. And the other example, which I think is more relatable for non-coders, was Dragon Copilot in healthcare.
I saw the numbers on this. Used by 100,000 health professionals.
And in the last quarter alone, it documented 21 million patient conversations.
That is just staggering.
But think about the human impact. That is millions of hours of doctors not staring at a screen typing into an electronic health record system. Instead, they are looking at their patients. The AI listens, synthesizes the medical notes, codes the diagnosis, and files it.
See, that is the diffusion Nadella is talking about. It's not a parlor trick. It's actual economic labor being offloaded to software.
But, and there's always a huge but, in these financial reports, this heavy lifting is incredibly expensive. You mentioned the financial fortress earlier, but when we look at the capital expenditures, or CapEx, the money going out the door is shocking.
It's eye-watering. In Q1 of fiscal year 26, CapEx was $19 billion. In Q2, the report says it jumped to $37.5 billion.
$37.5 billion in 90 days.
That is more than most companies, even massive ones, spend in a decade. Where is it all going?
It is largely going into building AI factories. We need to stop thinking of them as data centers. These are industrial plants filled with GPUs, CPUs, and cooling systems. And this is where the investor tension comes in. If you look at the cloud margins, they actually compress slightly to 67%.
Because it costs so much to build a factory before you can sell the product.
Precisely. Wall Street is nervous. They are looking at this $37 billion check and asking, are we spending all this money on chips and concrete just to wait around? Will the profits from these AI agents arrive fast enough to pay for it?
It's a gamble. A $1 trillion gamble. They're betting that the demand for intelligence is effectively infinite.
It is the most expensive infrastructure build-out in human history. And speaking of infrastructure, this is where the deep dive gets really interesting. Because to run all those chips, you need power, you need cooling, and you need steel to build the buildings.
And Microsoft isn't just buying these things off the shelf anymore. They are realizing the supply chain doesn't exist to support their growth, so they are going out and building it themselves.
This is the part that surprised me the most. We usually think of Microsoft as bits and bytes, but their Climate Innovation Fund report reads like an industrial manufacturing catalog.
They call it the market development flywheel. Can you unpack that? Because it sounds like buzzword soup.
It's actually a very clever financial mechanism. So Microsoft has a massive balance sheet. They need green technology like green steel or green jet fuel to meet their climate goals. But that technology is too expensive, and the startups making it are too risky for traditional banks to lend to.
So the banks say, no, we aren't giving you $1 billion to build a hydrogen steel plant. You're just an unproven startup.
Exactly. So Microsoft steps in with an invest-to-procure strategy. They invest some equity in the company, sure, but more importantly, they sign a massive offtake agreement. They sign a contract to buy the steel or the fuel before the factory is even built.
They guarantee the customer.
They guarantee the revenue. And once Microsoft signs that contract, the startup can take that piece of paper to a bank and say, look, Microsoft, a company with a AAA credit rating, is legally obligated to buy our product for the next 10 years.
And suddenly, the bank opens the vault.
Exactly. Microsoft is using its credit rating to bridge the gap for hard tech. Take Stegra, for example. It used to be called H2 Green Steel, based in Sweden.
Right, making steel usually involves burning coal, which is a carbon nightmare.
Stegra uses hydrogen. It emits water, not CO2. But you need a massive factory. Microsoft pre-bought the steel for their data centers, enabling Stegra to build the plant.
So Microsoft becomes a construction company by proxy. And they're doing this for jet fuel, too. I saw 12 and LanzaJet in the notes.
They are. Sustainable Aviation Fuel, or SF. 12 is actually making jet fuel out of CO2. It's practically alchemy turning emissions back into fuel.
But wait, Microsoft doesn't fly planes. I mean, they have business travel, but they aren't Delta or United. Why are they buying millions of gallons of jet fuel?
This brings us to a concept called book and claim. It can be a bit confusing, so think of it like the power grid. When you pay for green energy at your house, you aren't getting electrons specifically from a wind turbine. You are getting the general mix of the grid, but you are paying to ensure that green energy was added to the grid on your behalf.
Okay, so I pay for the clean stuff to be put in the pool.
Exactly. With book and claim, Microsoft pays the green premium the extra cost for the sustainable aviation fuel. That fuel might be pumped into a plane in Los Angeles, while the Microsoft executive is flying out of New York on a plane burning standard kerosene. But Microsoft claims the carbon reduction credit because they paid for the green fuel to enter the global supply.
They're subsidizing the market creation.
Correct. They're sending a market signal that says, if you make this expensive green stuff, we will pay for it. It addresses what is called Scope 3 emissions, the emissions from their supply chain and travel. It is the only way to kickstart these heavy industries because, right now, green jet fuel is way too expensive for airlines to buy on their own.
It's wild to think of a software company kickstarting the steel and fuel industries. But I guess if you're building data centers the size of small cities, you become a resource management company, whether you like it or not.
And you become a recycling company. They are even investing in a firm called Cyclic Materials that recycles rare earth magnets from old hard drives. They are trying to close the loop on the physical materials that run the cloud.
Speaking of hard drives, this brings me to my absolute favorite part of the source material. We have to talk about Project Silica.
I had a feeling this would be your highlight.
I mean, come on. Storing data on glass, it sounds like Superman's fortress of solitude.
It does, but it addresses a very unsexy, very real problem. We are generating too much data. AI models, 4K video, medical records, legal archives. The current way we store this magnetic tape in hard drives has a fatal flaw. It rots.
It rot.
Physics. Magnetic fields degrade, hard drives wear out, tapes degrade. You have to migrate that data, copy it to a new drive every 5 to 7 years.
Which is expensive, labor-intensive, and uses a ton of energy.
Project Silica is Microsoft's solution. They have developed a square of quartz glass, borosilicate glass, technically. It's tiny, roughly the size of a drink coaster, and just 2 millimeters thick.
And what can it hold?
One of these little plates can hold 4.8 terabytes of data. That is enough for a massive movie library on a piece of glass you can hold in your palm.
And the durability.
That's the game changer. 10,000 years.
10,000 years.
Yeah.
That is longer than recorded human history.
The sources say it withstands boiling water, microwaves, and demagnetization. You can literally boil your data in a pot of water, scratch it with steel wool, and it will be fine.
How on earth do you write data into glass? Is it etching the surface like a vinyl record?
No, surface scratches would destroy it. They use femtosecond lasers that pulse purely for a quadrillionth of a second. They focus the laser inside the glass to change the physical structure, creating what they call voxels.
Voxels, like 3D pixels.
Exactly. They write the data in hundreds of layers inside the glass. It's 3D storage.
So why are they doing this? Is this so I can back up my family photos and bury them in the backyard?
Not yet. The write speed is still too slow for consumer use. This is for the archival cloud. Think about all the data Microsoft has legally or operationally that they need to keep forever but might never look at again, or financial records or scientific data.
It's the modern Library of Alexandria, but fireproof.
And, crucially, it's energy efficient. Once you write the data into the glass, it consumes zero energy. None. You just put it on a shelf. You don't need to keep the disk spinning or the room cool. In a world where AI is consuming massive amounts of energy, zero energy storage is the holy grail for the long term.
So let's zoom out and look at the whole board. We have this company generating $81 billion a quarter. They are betting the farm on AI agents to do our work. They're rebuilding the steel and fuel industries to build the factories to run the AI, and they are inventing glass memory to remember it all for 10,000 years.
It is a comprehensive strategy. They are trying to own the entire stack of the future economy. From the atoms, the steel, the energy, the glass, to the bits, the AI agents, and the cloud.
But I have to ask the difficult question. Is it too much? We talked about the capex, $37.5 billion in a single quarter. Is there a scenario where this goes wrong?
That is the trillion-dollar question. The provocative thought here and what investors are whispering is about the speed of the return. We are building what I like to call a Ferrari engine, these incredibly sophisticated AI models and massive data centers.
But where is the car?
Exactly. We are installing this Ferrari engine into a bicycle economy.
Meaning the rest of the world isn't ready for it.
Meaning our business is actually changing fast enough to use this power? Can a hospital administration system really integrate Dragon Copilot overnight? Can a legacy bank switch to AI agents without breaking their compliance rules?
It's an adoption bottleneck.
If the diffusion Adela talks about happens too slowly, Microsoft is left holding the bill for the most expensive construction project in history. They are building the highway before people have bought the cars.
And while they have the cash flow from Azure and Office to sustain it for now, the pressure is on.
Yeah.
They need us, the users, the companies, to fundamentally change how we work, and fast. Which leads me to something not explicitly in the sources, but it builds right off this bottleneck idea. What happens to the companies that decide they don't want to buy the Ferrari? If Microsoft's vision of widespread diffusion becomes the baseline for staying competitive, companies that hesitate might not just fall behind. They might face an existential threat. They could be entirely priced out of innovation within a single business cycle.
That is the challenge. The technology is shifting from a tool to a teammate. If you are still using AI just to write a funny email or summarize a PDF, you might be missing the revolution that Microsoft is pricing in.
So the next time you open your laptop, ask yourself, are you driving the Ferrari or are you still pedaling the bicycle? Because Microsoft has already bought the gas.
A great question to end on.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll catch you on the next one.